You know, in a crowd this size, there's a number of us who are experiencing different levels of marital satisfaction. Some of you are on the brink of divorce. No one knows it but you and your spouse. Obviously, God does, but your family doesn't really know it. Your best friends don't really realize it, yet in your heart of hearts, you know it's not working for you. And you're here today wondering if it can ever work again. It used to work by virtue of you being married, but it's just a secret that you have between you and your spouse. Now, there's some other marriages here, and you would be sort of in relational purgatory. You'd be between the two. Let's say this is the door of marital fulfillment. The other door is the door of divorce. And you would say, you know, it's not that good. And just to be frank with you, to be honest with you, it's not really flowing. And you realize intuitively that if you continue down this path, you're going to end up as another statistic. One day you know you'll end up in divorce. So some here, you have your hands on the door gear, ready to bolt through the door of divorce. Others are between the two. Now, some here have experienced the dark underbelly of divorce. Maybe you're a child of divorce. When I say the word child, you could be 10, you could be 30, you could be 45, for all I know. Divorce has a ripple effect. It's not just between a man and a woman or a husband and a wife. It's between family members, and it's highly emotional, and the scars tend to run very, very deep, and the wounds are just hideous. Just the other day, I was out of town, and I got into a conversation with a couple of students, and they asked me what I did for a living. Now, that's always interesting when I tell people what I do for a living, because the conversation always changes. Obviously, these people were very far away from God, and I said, well, I'm a pastor. They said, you're kidding me. I said, yeah. They said, you don't look like a pastor. I said, well, I'm not sure what a pastor's supposed to look like, but I'm a pastor. I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much. And they began to say, well, what do you talk about, you know, when you do the pastor thing? I said, recently I've been talking about divorce. When I said the D word, they leaned in and they said, divorce is horrible. And they looked at each other and they said, our parents have just gone through divorces and we absolutely hate it. And they talked about how much anger and animosity they had toward their parents. And one was 18. And she said her boyfriend was 30. And she was like, man, I'm thinking about just moving in with him. I said, don't do that. Don't do that. You're making a major mistake. The other one said, I'll never get married. I don't trust men. Divorce is devastating. Several minutes later, I walked into a pet store. The woman walked up to me. She was in her mid-50s, and we began to talk about dog collars. My wife and I have 4 dogs, and I was looking for this certain type of dog collar, and she said, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a pastor. She said, really? I'm not religious. I said, I'm not either. I said, I'm into a relationship with Jesus, but I'm not religious. And we began to talk, and she asked me the same question. She goes, well, what do you talk about at your mass or the thing that you do? And I said, well, recently, I just tossed it out again, I've been talking about divorce. When I said that, she got a strange look on her face, and she said, divorce? That will blank up your life. She said, I left my husband 10 years ago, and someone should have taken my blank and tied me to a tree and beat the blank out of me. I could just feel the hurt, and I experienced some of the venom. And she said, you know what? She said, my daughter called me just a couple days ago, and she said, Mom, our family isn't normal. You're here, Dad's over there. Everything is totally screwed up. And then she looked at me and she said, you know what? my daughter was right. And then she said, when you talk about divorce, you tell people the grass is never greener, and you tell these couples, these husbands and wives, to look past the now. Wow. Powerful words from a pagan. I was thinking, what if we could go back 10 years ago in that lady's marriage? What if we could go back to when she had her hands on the hardware of the door, and what if we could go back and see what pushed her into the door and through the door of divorce? That would be interesting. I could tell you, though, what did it. I've talked to enough people. I've done enough marital counseling. I've read enough books. I can tell you what led her to divorce. In fact, these predictors pretty much lead every couple through the door of divorce. And what's so interesting about it, recently I sat down and had a conversation with a relational expert about some of these things. And I want you to join our conversation and listen very, very carefully to what this guy has to say.
Dr. Jonathan Cood is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a great friend of mine in Fellowship Church. And Jonathan, you've been a part of Fellowship since the get-go.
Since the beginning. It's been quite a ride.
Oh, it has been.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been phenomenal. Jonathan, I say often that one of the biggest mistakes that Lisa and I made, that I made early on, was the failure to seek and get great biblical counseling prior to marriage, and also, too, during the first, I would say, 7 to 10 years, we did not do that. And Christian counseling has benefited us so much. And as we're talking about divorce, wouldn't you say that one of the reasons so many people walk through the door of divorce is because they don't seek counseling?
Oh, sure. I mean, there are some very predictable, not only signs of divorce, but also some times in our marriage that when we're the most vulnerable. Actually, by year 7, we lose over 50% of marriages. 7 years is a pretty big...
So the 7-year itch, that's a fact.
Well, actually, it's related to the birth of the first child, because the birth of the first child is the most change point, the biggest change point in the whole life cycle of a marriage. So the 7th year is tough. Most of the divorces cluster around that 7th year. There's also a time that's also related to the first child. It's the 17th year of marriage. It's very tough because it's on average when the firstborn turns 14. We can see why, because they're going through all this change.
Oh, yes, we can.
And the family dynamics are such and that it just creates a lot of pressure on the marriage. And in fact, during those adolescent years, marital satisfaction is at the lowest. So there are some very predictable points that we really need to be careful about how to safeguard our marriage and protect it, because there are points of vulnerability that we know about.
What are some things, Jonathan, some indicators that couples might be really looking at that door of divorce? What are some things that you've seen in all of your counseling and study of human behavior and of different married couples?
One of the things that I really look for is in the conflict process. And so there are really 4 indicators, 4 predictors of divorce. Gottman calls them the 4 horsemen, because they really do 80% of the time predict the end of a marriage. John Gottman.
Oh, Johnny Gottman.
Johnny,
yes.
Researcher, University of Washington.
Yeah.
And Gottman has predicted that there are 4 indicators that if we see them in a marriage, in their marital interaction and conflict, that we can 80% of the time predict that this couple is not going to make it. And the first one is criticism. When you come into a conflict and begin to criticize the other person's character. And we need to deal with our negative affects. So we need to have a way that we can deal with the negative emotions of anger and resentment. And it's really good to be able to pinpoint a specific situation and talk about our anger or hurt or whatever. But criticism is really a characterization of the person.
For example, like?
Well, when we call them, if they forget to do something, we may call them lazy, or we may say, well, you just don't care about me. That's a characterization of their motives. It kind of tells them who they are in a negative way, and that's really criticism, and that's a big red flag, one of the horsemen. The second one, and it's really very reasonable to believe that when a person gets criticized, what are they going to do? That's right, they're going to get defensive.
Yes.
That's another indicator there of divorce. And defensiveness really is just blame. It's just blaming the other person because you're not taking responsibility for what might be happening. But the criticism, obviously, it makes it very difficult to say, okay, now, what part of that is true? What do I need to be influenced by? And what do I need to really look at in my own self to respond to them in their attempt to throw a bid at me for me to be able to respond in a way that they can feel that I'm engaged and emotionally connected in that conversation. Well, that sets up the defensiveness, criticism, defensiveness cycle, obviously. And usually what is there also in divorcing couples is contempt. That quality. It's really I'm better than you, I'm looking down. So we come up with words like disdain. You have a lot of sarcasm and cynicism in those marital interactions. Basically, you're kind of out to get the other person, and it moves from just criticism to what I call intentional hurt. You're just out to get the other person. You perceive them as your enemy. And when contempt, in fact, that's probably the most dangerous because that really hurts so much, because at that point, it's just all-out war at times. And the response to the contempt is the next horseman that kind of gallops into our relationship during conflict, and that is stonewalling. We begin to cut ourselves off from the other person emotionally. We turn around and walk out, or when they're trying to get something across to us, sometimes we just won't answer. And that's stonewalling, when there's just a lack of responsiveness. And so that means if I see that person is kind of checked out from the marriage.
Jonathan, I'm sure a lot of people are hearing you, they're like, wow. I mean, we are riding that horse. I'm riding that horse. How do I take the reins
Right.
and then go the opposite direction? Because I know you deal with that. How do we do that?
Oh, sure. That's a great question, a great area to go into, because there is hope. Even if you have those four horsemen galloping all around the conflict process, you really have to go back to some really basic things. And it's what you and I know in our marriages is just knowing the other person. It's called a love mapping. I mean, we have to know and be on the same map so that we know what they like. We just know what their interests are. We know how they like their coffee in the morning. Just those real personal type of qualities where we just get a sense that they are a part of our lives. That's part of the connecting. If you experience those four horsemen and then the total overwhelming feeling of flooding, it's called, when all those get in process, you have to go back to some basics of, believe it or not, friendship. The fondness, the admiration that we experienced, remember, early in our relationship, just having a good time, that's really one of the best counterparts of some of these negative qualities that we need to go back to. In fact, even the research tells us that a couple in conflict, a lot of times it's good to not necessarily get them to talk about the conflict, but get them to go outside of the conflict, plan something fun. It's not avoidance. But it's really redirecting back to the part of our relationship that made it good in the first place.
So as far as criticism, what's the antidote to that? What would you say?
Yeah, obviously, to be able to learn how to legitimately deal with the negative emotions that you have. Complaining, hey, it really embarrassed me when we were at that party and you made fun of my weight, or I really didn't like it. You told me you were going to take out the trash and you didn't. See, those are legitimate things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day normal interaction of marriage.
And Scripture has a lot to say about criticism too, doesn't it?
It sure does. Obviously, not to do that. Kind words, soft words in response to what you may perceive as a criticism, but it may be something very legitimate. So we need to watch how we talk. You talk about the tongue all the time and about how powerful it is. All those verses that talk about we need to take control and tame the tongue, as it talks about in James 1 there.
Now, how about defensiveness?
Well, just think of defensiveness. That other person is trying to get you to do something. They're either bringing something on, they're shifting responsibility through criticism, and our natural tendency is to say, hey, I want to push it back over there. The cure for defensiveness is being able to have enough goodwill in the relationship where you can step back and not automatically react, but say, okay, what part of that is good? What part of that is true? What part do I really need to hear? So really the cure for defensiveness is personal responsibility. And that's a very simple thing, but sometimes when you're in the heat of a conflict, it's the most difficult thing to do.
What you told me the other day, there's a new study out that if your pulse rate exceeds 90 beats per minute,
if you're an athlete. Yeah, and it's 100 beats if you're like me. But if in the context of conflict, if our heart rate gets up over 100 beats per minute, really we lose any kind of ability to rationally problem solve.
Whoa.
Our emotions take over. So our heart rate gets up, our blood pressure gets up, and that's part of the flooding process when we're when all those four horsemen are running around in our marriage.
How about contempt?
Contempt. I tell you what, contempt is basically the perception that you really are better than the other person, that you can tell them what to do, that you have, that you're taking the moral high ground. So I love that those scriptures that talk about we're joint heirs with Christ. You know, in God's view, there's no difference between a man and a woman in terms of, now we do different functions in the marriage, but in terms of value, we are the same. So I think we just have to go back to that and say, you know what? We're on the same page, on the same level. God created both of us, and we need to treat each other as God's creation.
Now, how about stonewalling?
Well, stonewalling obviously is just that, building the wall, just like the word says. And sometimes we build it brick by brick, and we have to undo the wall or tear the wall down brick by brick. Vulnerability, coming back to the person. There is a process that I like to talk about. It's when somebody puts a bid out there. It's a bid for affection or a bid for some kind of attention.
I like that term, bid.
Yeah, we throw it out there. It's a cast. Really.
I like that better.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And a lot of times, people who are in really distress and getting close to divorce will just not respond. So we need to be influenced by those bids, and we need to learn to be responsive and stay in the conversations, not run from them, be vulnerable about our own feelings, and come back to the table. That's what the cure for stonewalling is about, to take the wall down and move back toward the relationship in a way of openness. And if you do that, then there's really a good chance that you can get those four horsemen out of the marriage, out of the conflict process.
Now, Jonathan, give me some success stories about people that you've dealt with that were like right at the door of divorce. I mean, they had both their hands, you know, on the hardware. They were going to go through it, yet they walked into your office and.
Oh, that's a fairly common thing. They say, well, it was either you or the divorce attorney. Talking about a little pressure on the situation. So
they say that to you when they walk in?
Yeah. We're going to the divorce, or I called a divorce attorney, I called an attorney, or we've got the process started. I try to get them to put that on hold. But there have been many times when they if they learn how to get rid of those horsemen, you know, the criticism, and really return to the very thing that they really liked about each other, because every one of these couples at one point were so positive. They had a lot of positive sentiment.
That's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, they didn't get married hating each other, you know.
So you're trying to capture that and bring that into the present.
Oh, yes. Yeah. In fact, that's why we do a lot of positive tracking, or on date nights, just have them to talk about, hey, what we used to enjoy.
Yes.
Now, it's really tragic when someone cannot remember good times, and that's really a key indicator, too. If that negative sentiment, because of those negative qualities of the four horsemen, have just run rampant in the marriage, some people actually have redone their memory so that they cannot come up with much, or if any. But if they can come up with just one or two things, we can start building on that. Yes. There's a quality in a marriage, a variable in a marriage, that out of that comes two very important things that most of us guys would pay big money for. Those two consequences of this one variable is, one of those is passionate sex, and the other is fulfilling sex. If you thought you could get those two and come back to that variable, wouldn't you pay money for that? It's not that hard. It's the friendship. This is a research-based fact that the friendship we have with our spouse, I think women intuitively know that. You know, we guys don't.
No, we don't.
No, we don't know that kind of stuff. But we just need to go back to the things that brought us together in the first place. Those times together where we took walks, where we talked in more positive ways.
You guys are just hard-headed compared to women.
Yeah,
there's something about the head, you know.
Yeah, we're a little bit. In fact, talking about our hard-headedness as men, the research also tells us that our biggest struggle is that we struggle to receive influence from our wives, which means it's very difficult for us to sit back and say, wow, okay, let me soak on that, let me think about that, let that influence me. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, we are kind of hard-headed at times.
A lot of people, Jonathan, are looking for some kind of quick fix to move them from one door to the other door. If there's one thing I can hear or one experience, then it'll take my marriage to this level of ecstasy for the rest of my life that I never dreamed possible.
Right. I think people do come into counseling sometimes with unrealistic expectations. In fact, there was a couple at fellowship, they ended up divorcing. Talking about success stories, they end up back in my office a year later, and they say, okay, we really do love each other. They were able to get rid of some of that negative sentiment.
That's great.
And so we want to put ourselves in counseling again. And so they did that. A few months later, we're married in front of their home team. Really a fascinating story. Are all the problems gone? No, they still deal with them. But that's one of the big things that people have to realize when they come to counseling, that they may have waited too long.
Jonathan, how many people do you think, though, that you talk to, all the couples, who would be near, I mean, in your opinion, on their way through the door of divorce, how many walk through it and how many reconcile, you think, and go to the other door?
Well, I think actually most don't get divorced. Infidelity is what puts people into counseling a lot, and
Most don't.
Most don't get divorced if they come through the counseling process, take it seriously, work hard at it. They find those.
Man, that's encouraging, man. That should be encouraging to everyone here. But so often people are scared to walk into a Christian counselor's office, especially the guys. I think when I talk to guys, they go, man, you and your spouse, you and your wife, you need to go to Christian counseling. I mean, the wife's like, oh yeah, I'm there, man. Yeah. But the guy's like, I don't know. Why is that?
Right. Well, the only time a guy will call is when his wife is usually fed up and has left him. And he's in a panic. We don't want to be told how to do things. We don't want to receive influence, not only from our wives, we don't want to receive influence much from anybody. We like to kind of be in charge. And I think that's the biggest thing, the pride thing, that it's hard. But once you're knocked down.
Just that male pride.
Oh yeah, just being a guy. You know, we don't have as many words per day as women do. We're a little intimidated, I think, by, but even the research says that we don't have to learn to talk like a therapist in order to have a good marriage. You don't have to use the I feel statements all the time. You can just be yourself. But there are some of those things that we need to learn about conflict regulation, regulating the conflict. Did you know that over 2/3, actually 69% of all issues in marriage that couples fight about are perpetual issues? They don't go away.
69%.
Yeah, I think
it's almost 70% would be
reoccurring fights. If you talk to anybody, they would say,
like what are the subjects, for example? I can just kind of guess. What
sex
are they?
is probably one of the biggest issues. Guys are usually more interested in more frequent sex than women are. Parenting issues. Usually one parent is more involved in the process than the other. Housework, just from the standpoint of helping out. I mean, even as far as we've come, the women still do more in the house than the men do on average. Of course, you and I are different. We just really we really get in there. The social part of our relationship. One of the perpetual issues is that one person usually is more interested in being more social, having more people over, and the other one may be more or a little less social. And those are some of the perpetual issues that we continue to fight about. And counseling can help you to really identify the perpetual problems and then the solvable problems, and then give you a few skills to at least know how to tell the difference and to be able to work on the solvable problems. And there are a lot of those, a lot of solvable problems. But if you observe a couple, and it's just very thematic. I mean, they'll have the same. I had a couple in here in my office today. They fought about this for about 3 minutes, which was a perpetual issue. That led them into another perpetual issue. In the space of about 10 minutes, they moved into 3 perpetual issues. And so I stopped them And we got them to talk about, okay, what's that about? And let them look at that and realize that that's really good news, that we don't have to solve all this stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, I tell couples, how long do you have to figure this out? And they'll say, well, let's see, our wedding's in 3 months, so I've got 3 months. I say, well, you don't have to get it figured out before you get married. You don't have to get it figured out the first year, nor do you have to get it figured out the first decade. You've got the rest of your life to work on this stuff.
That's why marriage is for life. It's a covenant, one man, one woman, together before God.
That's right.
Well, the question that hangs in the balance is this. You got these 4 predictors of divorce, these 4 horsemen that many people are riding into divorce. Some people know you're riding them, others don't. How do we grab the reins, though, in reverse field? How do we jump on maybe to some other horses, and how do we ride these horses through the door of marital fulfillment? Now, that's a good question. At this point, I know it's very tempting for those of us who are married to think about our spouse. Over the next few moments, it's tempting for me to think about Lisa, or for Lisa to think about me. It's tempting for you to think about your wife, or women, for you to think about your husband. Don't do it. Just breathe this prayer to yourself. God, change me. God, speak to me. The moment we walk through the door, what happens? Scripture says in John 10, Jesus said, I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he or she, they're going to be saved. They're going to go in and out and find pasture. And then he said, I've come that you might have life and have it abundantly. Even marital life. Jesus desires us to have an abundant marital life. So when it's all about Jesus, and as we receive him, we have the power to grab the reins and reverse field. So instead of criticism, I believe we can ride some other horses, like affirmation. What does it mean when I affirm something? It's a statement that I exert about the existence of something. So when I affirm Lisa, I would say, Lisa, you're a great cook. She is. That's a fact. That's a reality. That's in existence. Lisa, you're an awesome chef. Okay. We need affirmation. We also need admiration. Admiration is when I am or you are enthusiastically approving of something. So I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm stoked about it. Like several nights ago, I said, Lisa, the tres leches was phenomenal. Wow, the cake melted in my mouth, and I love tres leches. Do you? Wow, what a great cake. So affirmation and admiration. I hear women tell me this all the time. You know, I'm just looking for a guy to put me on a pedestal. I just need my husband to put me on a pedestal. And you know, when I'm dating him, he just needs to put me on a pedestal. And I used to be on a pedestal, but now I'm not. Well, that's true. Men, we have got to put the women on a pedestal, but also, too, women, put the men on the pedestal. We need it. We need it. So often people will come up to me and they'll go, Ed, I enjoyed that talk. Man, that really meant a lot to me. God really used you. And I love those words of affirmation and admiration. Sometimes people say, well, Ed, I know you must hear this all the time, but no, I don't hear it all the time. You know, I appreciate that. Thank you for the emails and the cards and the comments over the years. They really put wind in my sail. However, there is one person that can take affirmation and admiration in my life to an HNL, a whole nother level. Lisa. When Lisa affirms me and admires me when she says, honey, I love today's message. Wow, that just does it for me. The power of affirmation and admiration. Scripture is just so cool because it puts it in terms that women can understand. Scripture calls words jewelry. You think I'm lying to you. If you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 25, verse 11. This is the jewelry verse. Ladies, you could use this verse as leverage for your man to buy you some nice jewelry. Check it out. Proverbs 25:11. A word aptly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Blink, blink, ka-ching, ka-ching. Study your spouse. Know what puts wind in their sail. A touch, a look, a comment, that's TLC. We've got to be about affirmation and admiration. Those are some good horses to ride. They'll take you to the door of marital fulfillment. Well, instead of being defensive, as we discussed, what can we do, or what should we be? How about vulnerability? Say it with me. Vulnerability. It's hard to even say. Vulnerability. Vulnerability and intimacy are intrinsically tied together. We don't need to be defensive. We need to be vulnerable. When I'm vulnerable with Lisa and when she's vulnerable with me, we're sharing our fears, our dreams, our successes, our questions. Vulnerability. Men, we don't naturally do the whole vulnerability thing, do we? That's not really in our DNA. Yet, I would challenge you to create venues of vulnerability. You can't have vulnerability on the fly. You can't have vulnerability when you're overcommitted, overstimulated, and over the top. You can't have vulnerability when you're just flying through the game of life. We've got to stop and create venues of vulnerability. That's why I talk about the date night so much. What you use to get her, guys, is what you use to keep her. Date your mate. I've written books on it. I've lectured about it. Have a date night at least 3 nights a month. Or you could say 3 days a month, whatever you want to do. Day or night, whatever. It's a date. You and your spouse alone. Dating. In that venue where you draw away, where you're alone, you can share your fears and your dreams and your questions and your desires. You can have this time of vulnerability, but it's got to be a venue. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a venue. That's why I encourage taking trips together, at least once or twice a year, just you and your spouse. Kids are critical when it comes to vulnerability. I wrote a book called Kids CEO, and I defined the word kids, K-I-D-S, keeping intimacy at a distance successfully. That's what kids are. Keeping intimacy at a distance successfully. So if you want to have those venues of vulnerability, you better keep your kids at a distance successfully. Remember, spouses stay, kids leave. Here's another point. Don't take your vulnerability and make it visible. It's very tempting for women, because women speak thousands of more words than men. It's very tempting for women to talk about times of vulnerability and intimacy with their friends they play tennis with, or with their friends they see at the country club, or with their friends they see at the school, or with their neighbors. Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to God about it. Talk to a Christian counselor about it. Maybe a pastor about it. Because when you do that, your words will be like apples of gold in settings of silver. Lisa forced me into vulnerability a while back because we've spent I was counting the other day, I think 31 Valentine's Day together. 31 Valentine's Days together we've spent. And that's a long, long time, isn't it? I mean, what do you do creative after 31 Valentine's Days? That's a lot, isn't it? Well, Lisa thought of something. We know a photographer here in the church, and she took this picture of us. You got a shot of that? Just, picture. Love is in the air, right there, We're happy. Well, Lisa had this frame with this giant mat around the picture, and when I saw it, I was wondering, why the giant mat? Why not the picture being bigger? But anyway, she had ideas. Valentine's night, this was on our bed with 2 Sharpie markers. And she said, honey, we're going to write about our relationship. I said, what? She goes, we're going to write just meaningful words, pithy comments about our 31 years together. I have other things in mind, and we're writing on a mat in this picture. So we began to write, and at first it was kind of like, kind of vulnerable. And the more I wrote, though, the more I got into it. And this is one of my favorite pictures that we have. I have this in my office. I'll read some of the statements. Carport kisses. Charlie perfume. She used to wear Charlie. You remember that? Are they still making Charlie? They probably are. And then she wrote, Jovan Musk Oil. That was my cologne of choice. Wow, that's a great cologne. No cologne smells like musk oil, I'll tell you that. Oh, here's a funny one. Boo to you too. I'll tell you a funny story about that. Boo to you too. Boo to you too. Lisa and I had been dating for several weeks, and I was over at her house, and she had a downstairs area. There was a pool table down there, and we were sitting on the couch and watching television. I was thinking about, okay, should I kiss her? I'm thinking that, and then she goes, would you like something to eat? I said, yeah. So she runs upstairs to get me something to eat, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to hide, scare her, and maybe she'll jump into my arms, plant one on or something like that. So I hear the little feet coming down the steps, and I'm hiding, and they get closer and closer, and then I go, boo! It's her mom. And her mom goes, boo to you too. As I said, vulnerability. We've got to be vulnerable. Contempt, that's a pretty tough word. The word contempt, we used it. It's a lack of respect or reverence of something. You see, the covenant of marriage, a blood bond for life, a commitment on steroids, a relationship on a whole nother level is all about respect. It's all about vulnerability. It's all about affirmation. It's all about admiration. So instead of defensiveness, try vulnerability. Instead of contempt, try respect. Respect. I can tell if a marriage is really together by watching how the wife watches her husband when he talks. If he's talking and she's looking at him like this, or correcting, everything he says, oh, no, honey, it was 14.3. No, we didn't see Dirk. It was Steve Nash we saw at Chili's. Steve Nash, yeah, you can just tell. You can feel it. I love dogs, and several years ago, I was calling some dog breeders. I was looking for a bull mastiff, one of those big hulking dogs, and I talked to this lady, and she was very nice on the phone. She was like, oh, I would love for you to have one of our bull mastiffs. In fact, here's Sadie. Sadie, she's going to have babies. Ed, I wish you could see her right now. You're going to be a good mommy, aren't you, Sadie? Talking to this dog like that. Then all of a sudden she goes, what do you want? Shut up, I'm on the phone. Sadie. Ed, I'm sorry, my husband interrupted our conversation. Man, she was treating Sadie, the dog, better than her husband. One time, Lisa and I were in an argument, and my voice my voice is loud anyway. I was kind of raising my voice, and my pulse rate was definitely over 100. And the phone rang. Hello? Yes, this is Pastor Ed Young from Fellowship Church. Isn't that amazing? Talk to your spouse respectfully, because you're one flesh. The two shall become one. Unity, diversity, but a oneness. So we must have that respect. In Philippians 2, verse 3, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider your spouse better than yourself. So that's something else we can do. Respect, vulnerability, affirmation, admiration. That's all about marital fulfillment. And then instead of stonewalling, instead of icing someone out, how about reconciliation? Here's what happens. John 10, let's go back to it. Jesus said, I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he or she shall be saved. They shall go in and out and find pasture. Will be saved, safe, and satisfied. And because of Jesus, we have the power and the ability to do these things and to walk through the door of marital fulfillment. Well, here's what happens when we walk through the door. 2 Corinthians 5 tells us, verses 18 and 19. Check this out. All of this is from God. See, everything is from God. I'm not just making this stuff up. I mean, we're talking, this is from God. This is what it means to be a full court follower of Christ, a full court husband or a full court wife. This is all from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the, let's say it together, ministry of reconciliation. God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sins against them. That's some good news right there. God does not count my sins against me. Isn't that great to know that today? And he's committed us to the message of, what's the word again? Reconciliation. Because I've been reconciled by God through Christ, because I've walked through the door, because Christ is in my life. As a Christ follower, I should rush to reconcile. Anytime Lisa and I have a relational sticking point, anytime there's an argument, anytime there's a problem, anytime I've done something against her as a believer, I should rush to reconcile, because I've been greatly and perfectly reconciled by the person of Jesus Christ. Reconciliation. Several days a week, I take our kids to school. Our oldest is in college, and 3 others are, at those ages where you got to drive them to school. Our kids argue and fight. I know that's hard for you to believe. Yes, preachers' kids argue and fight too. And usually when they're arguing and fighting, after about 5 minutes, I'll just go, stop. Not another word until we get to school. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All you hear is just the engine. We always, when we go the back way, we always go over this bridge, and then we get to school. And inevitably, on the bridge, this is hilarious, one of the kids will go, Dad, can I say something? I'll say yes. Laurie, Landra, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Maybe next week. Landra, will you forgive me? Next week. EJ, will you forgive me? It always happens on the bridge. So now I've called the bridge, I've named the bridge of forgiveness. Whenever we go on the bridge, I know forgiveness will take place. Just last week, they were in a fight. I said, I know what's going to happen. We're going to go over the bridge of forgiveness, and everything will be okay. I think marriages here need a bridge of forgiveness, don't you? I think we need to travel on that bridge regularly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and have this ministry of forgiveness and reconciliation, because forgiveness can be that rung on the ladder that'll take your marriage to a whole nother level. It really, really will. In John 10, Jesus kept going. Verse 10 specifically, he said, the thief comes, the enemy comes to do what? To steal, kill, and destroy, right? To steal, kill, and destroy. And the enemy's done a great job when it comes to marriage. He's stolen marriage from us. To have a great marriage, we've got to do the opposite of what our culture says. The opposite of what we see in movies, the opposite of what we read in the magazines, the opposite of what we see on television, the opposite. The evil one has stolen this covenant from us, and he's told us, you know what, it's just about feelings. If you don't feel love for him or her anymore, just jump in another bed, hook up with someone else, it'll be okay over there, and we deal with the same junk and the same funk, and our problems are multiplied exponentially, because we're going to deal with the same stuff in a bigger way, a broader way, a deeper way, when we leave one marriage and get into another one. So, he's stolen from us. He's also killed marriages. 50% of first-time marriages end in divorce. 67% of second-time marriages end in divorce. 74% of third-time marriages end in divorce. The enemy comes to steal, to kill, and also to destroy. Just talk to kids at divorce. The enemy will destroy covenant, he'll destroy commitment, he'll destroy reconciliation, he'll destroy vulnerability, he'll destroy affirmation and admiration, he'll destroy all these things, and he's doing it now. Man, divorce wouldn't be that bad if it was just between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, but hey, that's not the deal. There's a ripple effect going on, and it's tearing our culture apart. But the good news is, we've got the answer. Because we know the door and see the door, and we can rush through the door of marital fulfillment, because the horsemen of marital fulfillment smell the barn, they smell the door, and they're going for it. Last Sunday, I flew out after this service and spoke at our church in Miami. We have a Sunday night service. I took one of the twins with me, Landra. After preaching, we went out to eat at a restaurant with several people down there, some in the ministry, and we were sitting there, one of these kind of cool Miami restaurants, very, very casual. The place was jammed, and I think it was some kind of Peruvian, some kind of food. Anyway, it was good. It was really good. After we had finished eating, the waiter just puts the bill on the table. Thankfully, my friend picked the tab up. I was kind of a slow pay artist, You know any slow pay artists? The bill comes, and your friend's like, "Can I get that?" "Oh, okay, man. Next time. Well, my friend picked it up, and I had my wallet out, and Landra was kind of looking at my wallet, and she's like, "Dad, these credit cards are pretty." I said, yeah, they are. And I said, "Let me have my wallet back." And so I took the wallet and just put it in my chair under my leg. I thought we were getting ready to go. We were going to talk more and more about Miami and the church, and people in the ministry are, it just goes on and on and on. Or maybe you don't, but it goes on and on and on. We know how to talk and talk. And I could tell Landra was tired, and I'd spoken 5 times that weekend. I was starting to get tired. I said, "Okay, let's go." So I just stand up and head out, jump into this car, cruise back to the hotel. My friend drops us off. Landra and I are going to our rooms. "Landra, do you have my wallet?" "No." I said, "Landra, come on, you kidding me?" "No." "Oh, man, I've lost my wallet." I'm like, out of town in Miami, gone. So I picked the cell phone up, called my friend. "Hey, listen, I know you're right close to the restaurant," because the restaurant was near the hotel. I said, "Would you mind going there and just quickly asking our waiter," I think his name was Luis, "about the wallet?" So my friend goes into the restaurant, talks to the manager, he talks to Luis, talks to the bus boys, nothing. I rush down in the lobby and we call the restaurant, nothing. My friend even asked the people who were sitting in the table that we were sitting in to stand up and look around. He was looking in their chairs and under the table, nothing. I'm like, oh, this is the worst. Looked in the parking lot of the restaurant. Then we took the car to the hotel, just were ripping it apart, looking for the wallet. And in the midst of all of this, my 12-year-old daughter said, "Dad, have you prayed about it?" I said, "No, Landra, the wallet is gone. We're in Miami. The wallet is history. I've not prayed about it." Then, man, I felt so convicted. I said, "Okay, Landra, I'll pray for it." So we got into a little circle. It was Landra and several others, and here's my prayer. This is a pitiful prayer. Here's how I prayed, the exact prayer. "Dear Heavenly Father, bring me back my wallet in Jesus' name, amen." I even threw my hands down. Is that pitiful? 15 seconds later, the cell phone rings. "We found your wallet." "What?" We jump in the car, drive to the restaurant. We're in there in about 2 minutes. We get out, and there's my wallet. Someone was sitting on it, and it was the same color as the seat when they got up to look, and nothing was missing. All the money was there. All the credit cards were there. Man, I was so excited. Woo. There's nothing like finding something that you think was lost and gone. Well, maybe that's true with some of your marriages. Maybe just maybe you're thinking, okay, my marriage is gone. It's lost. It's curtains. There's no way I can find it again. I mean, it's impossible. I want to ask you the same question my daughter asked me. Have you prayed about it? Have you prayed about it? Because Jesus is the door, and the door is all about the abundant life, and it's all about marital fulfillment. And when we enter through the door and ride the 4 horsemen of fulfillment through the door, our lives and our marriages will be on a whole nother level.